The Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, which is charged with registering businesses and overseeing their existence, is also the body which helps to initiate the business rescue process. Business rescue, as defined by the Companies Act of 2008, aims to facilitate and to rehabilitate a company that is financially distressed. Well, earlier we caught up with the Commissioner at the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, Advocate Rory Voller. I first put it to him that business rescue was an important tool in assisting to help turn the fortunes of a company around.
To try and restructure themselves in a couple of ways. One is that it can either do so by coming back to a strength or a point of liquidity and solvency by dealing with some of their debt issues. But what it also does is, and the law also allows them, when it goes into rescue, for it to be a successful rescue. If it does then decide to go into liquidation, for example, and there's no hope of saving the company, but at least the creditors get more out of it than if the company went directly into liquidation without going into business rescue.
Yes.
So those are the two areas that they deal with in terms of what the legislation provides.
So what is it that the CIPC does? At what point do you intersect with the whole business rescue process?
Well, the actual business rescue process is what is called a self-administered process. So the company deals with it in terms of appointing of business rescue practitioners. CIPC is responsible for that. We are responsible to verify the credentials of the business rescue practitioners and basically what is called licensing of the business rescue practitioner to make sure that there is a cadre of business rescue practitioners who are well versed in the area of turning companies around and have the requisite knowledge and skill in order for that to do so. So the CIPC is responsible to accredit and license those particular practitioners.
And typically,
but the other area that we're responsible for is to administer the legal process. So when a company decides to go into rescue, there's two ways they can do so. They can either apply to a court, and the court can give them a specific order to place them in rescue, or alternatively, the company can pass what is called a resolution in order for the company to go into rescue. Now, all of those documents are filed with the CIPC. What we then do is that we place the company in rescue, we change the status of the company from in-business to in-business rescue so that there isn't a run of the company in terms of creditors, for example, or any other enforcement action. And thereafter, we administer the process by asking for reporting, making sure that the business rescue practitioner does his job in a certain way, and also keeping tabs on the rescue practitioner in terms of some of the regulations that we administer in terms of the Companies Act.
And just for clarification for the viewer, when a company goes into business rescue, it almost enables them to go into a shell where they don't have to meet their obligations immediately. Is that right?
That's correct. It gives them a little bit of a space to restructure themselves. So what happens is that all forms of debt compliance or them being liable for certain debt structures gets put onto a hold for a period. They have to start dealing with it immediately, right? Because there are certain timelines that are stressed out in the law. It says that, for example, you must do your first reporting within 3 months. Within 5 days, you must appoint a business rescue practitioner. Within 10 days, you must have a business rescue plan, etc., etc., etc. So it does give them a bit of a bubble. It gives them a breathing space. It gives them an ability to not be majorly over-concerned that the creditors are all going to start knocking on their door and demanding what they require in terms of debt, but it helps them to restructure themselves.
Yes. Advocate, we've been hearing about very high-profile business rescues, the likes of SAA, and of course, more recently, we've heard about Pumelela and, other high-profile companies. But can small businesses also get that facility?
That's correct. All forms of businesses can apply for business rescue. You're right. The big ones do make the headlines, like the Edcons and the SA Express, ComAir, for example. But in terms of figures and in terms of stats and numbers, actually during the course of this year, approximately 140 companies have gone into business rescue. And by far and large, it's actually much smaller to medium size that go into rescue more than the bigger ones. So we've seen across between smaller ones and larger ones, it's across the board.
Very significantly, Advocate, how successful are these processes? Is the business rescue process?
Look, business rescue in terms of successful business rescues is not very, very high. I have to admit that. We've seen some big ones. There's a couple of mines that have gone into rescue that have successfully been turned around. We've seen some larger public companies that have gone in and been successfully turned around. And we've seen some successes. But we've also seen quite a large number of them eventually end up in liquidation. It's all about timing. You know, directors need to understand that when they see that there are liquidity and solvency problems, and there is an obligation on them in terms of the law to place the company in rescue, or decide not to go into rescue, and therefore they have to state that accordingly in terms of what the Act requires, timing is the most important aspect, we firmly believe, in terms of the stats that we've seen. The earlier and the quicker that you go into business rescue, the likelihood of success is far larger.
Yes.
So it's all about the timelines, it's all about making the decisions, and it's all about getting the right business rescue practitioner on board in order for them to manage the company.
Based on what you say, obviously the whole economy has been shocked by the implications of COVID-19 and the lockdown that we've had to endure. Do you anticipate that you're going to see many applications hitting your tables now, given the fact that so many businesses have gone into shock?
I couldn't have said it better. We are already seeing the increase in volumes. I've even shifted some staff into the business rescue area in my office in order for them to manage the volume that we are seeing and that we envisage to see in the coming weeks and months. There's definitely going to be lots of debt restructuring. There's going to be a lot of recapitalization of companies, and there's going to be a huge number of companies that are going to apply for business rescue. So you're 100% as far as that is concerned.
All right. And just in terms of the business rescue process, when it came to the Gupta company, it felt like it was for years. Typically, how long should that process actually take?
Well, the timelines are quite specific, all right, in the Companies Act. As I said, I mentioned a few earlier, you've got a 5-day period in which to appoint your practitioner. You have to have your first business rescue plan and your first meetings within a very, very short space of time. And thereafter, there's other timelines as to when it should conclude. But the law does allow you to extend. It does allow you also to go to court to ask for extensions on the business rescue plan, which we've seen a lot, because depending on the size of the company, many rescues are extremely complex, and they could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. It depends on the practicalities of what the company is being faced with, the industry in which the company is in. For example, if you look at SAA, very, very complex business, aviation and airlines, and therefore they have obviously asked for extensions because the business rescue is still in process. If you look at the timelines, that should have been concluding, but because of the nature of it, there is always extensions to this particular type of business. If you look at mines, if you look at certain types of industries in the IT area, they become complex, they do last much longer. But as to how long it shall last, becomes what is called shareholder activism. We also want shareholders to play massive part in the rescue process. As I also mentioned right in the beginning of the interview, that it's a self-administered process that the company goes through. So we need the watchdogs. If you look at what the Companies Act even states, it says that even unions have a part to play in the way that a company goes into rescue. We've seen that in the past, a company going to rescue because of union pressure, a lot of union pressure. So we need all of the stakeholders that are involved in the company to play the self-administered part to make sure that there's a lot of activism and make sure that the company is able to deal with its legal obligations as quickly as possible.
Trade union UASA is accusing distressed companies of using business rescue to circumvent consulting unions regarding plans to retrench workers. This after ComAir was placed under business rescue while it was in the middle of a Section 189 process with unions recently.
2 weeks ago, SA Express was placed under provisional liquidation. The move was blamed on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced the airline to cease operations in March. At the time, the company had been under business rescue since February. Up until now, business rescue does not have a high success rate in saving distressed companies in the country.
Companies usually apply when it's too late or when they are forced to do so, either through an organized labor process or if the directors of the company or some people who have an the creditors, for example, when they come through consistently looking for monies that they cannot be paid back, then that's when most companies would go into a business rescue process instead of going for the liquidation process. The common thing regarding business rescue is that, at first, in most cases, it's not very successful. And the second thing is, when companies go through the business rescue process, most times it's too late. The companies cannot be saved.
Recently, there's been a spate of business rescue announcements as companies struggle to survive under national lockdown to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Wasa says it smells red.
It seems every other company and every other person is looking at which the losses that are coming in as a result of the lockdown, most of which are very credible losses that are actually occurring. But then you get companies like we mentioned with ComAir now, where then they just took advantage of the situation. We understand that the planes are grounded. We understand that they're not available to fly to go anywhere, and business is suffering. But it looks like they've looked down on the initial process that we're going through, which was the Section 189 of the CCMA, and they focus all their attention now to the business rescue plan, which by all means is going to also result in the loss of jobs as well.
Then there's SAA. It's been under business rescue for 5 months now, well past the statutory limit of 3 months. Trade unions at SAA have slammed the business rescue practitioners for failing to produce a rescue plan until now. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan recently expressed a similar feeling as well. Bongeno Mutwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Let's take a final look at the markets. More news for you at the top of the hour. Your weather details are coming up after a short break with Mpho.